Drawings that look more effective often come from more effective ways of thinking. What we draw comes through the filter of our mind, of our thoughts, of our intentions. And if we're not happy with how our drawings look, it may not be because we lack technical skills, or that may not be nearly as significant as we think, but that we need to shift in some way the way we're thinking when we approach a scene. In my experience, the most helpful shift in thinking that I've had is to stop thinking of drawing as outlining shapes and objects, and instead of creating an effect, of creating, in fact, the effect that either we see in our reference or that we want to create from our reference. And when I'm talking about effect, I'm talking about a feel, a perception, the way something looks in an overall sense, creating a significant sense of reality in what we see. And reality, drawing reality, or creating, drawing reality, is an onerous task and often impossible. How can we draw the reality of a tree with all the leaves? But capturing the effect of a tree, drawing the effect of a tree by using whatever marks create that effect on our paper is a very achievable and workable and effective way of drawing. But it's not just trees, it's not just objects, it's the overall effect of the scene as well. And it's a mistake to think of a drawing as being the various objects that are in our reference put together. The scene is not just the totality of everything in it, but it's the impact that all of these objects have at the distance that we're at, in the condition that they are, under the lighting that they have. All of these things create a certain effect, a certain feel. They have a certain impact. They create a certain result in our minds when we look at them, and our feelings, quite possibly. And sometimes what in themselves are fairly ordinary or relatively plain objects together under certain conditions can create very interesting effects. And if we're looking at just drawing objects, then we're going to miss out on creating in our artwork the feel of a scene in its totality. Now, in my thinking, this is such a scene. In lots of ways, it's a fairly bare expanse of dirt and ground. There is a building, but we don't see it from a position of much detail. It's quite plain. There are some almost ruins of stonework in the front left corner, and then there's not much else except an overhanging tree on the right upper section and some small buildings and trees very much in the distance. So why would we want to draw this? I think this scene captures a great effect of a place and a time. A hot summer's day with almost overhead sun beating down. It was comfortably over 30 degrees. The top of a hill, very exposed, and a fairly historic site of an original convict settlement in Tasmania, Australia. It was at the top of a long, hot, hard walk that felt very bare and exposed and, did I say, hot? And we're just approaching the top of the hill here. And in the context of a historic site, these weathered old stones have more meaning. They're a symbol of the age of what happened here, of another era. And so I need to capture the effect of this stonework. And what is the effect? It's not just that they're blocks of stone placed on each other, but they're aged, weathered, cracked, starting to come apart stonework. And that's the effect I want to capture. I'm not wanting to draw lines to outline them, because that would give them a sharp, hard, smooth, new look, as if they're polished marble stones in a new building site. I want to use marks that give a softer, rounded, less exact, less precise look. I want to put marks on them that give the weathered appearance of the surfaces reality. I want to use marks that create the shadows that sometimes define the form that is invisible otherwise in this strong sunlight. But it's not just these stones. There are buried bricks that are partly aligned, that clearly are the, if you like, physical memory almost of buildings that have stood here in the past, which have now been raised down to ground level. And then we do, on the top of this hill, have the end of this building, a simple cottage type structure made of bricks, just house brick size, that are very, very weathered. And because they're weathered, they're catching the light and creating shadows in different ways. And so I don't want to draw bricks. I couldn't possibly draw these bricks, but I need to create marks on my paper which capture the effect of the bricks. It's not really about outlining the shape of the building. It's not just about getting the perspective angles correct, although if we want to create a sense of reality, we do need to get the perspective angles correct, not just of the building, but of the stonework and of every other thing that's in our scene. And so I'm using light marks that create the effect of bricks. And at a glance, there's no doubt that this is a brick cottage. And that's what I want. I don't want these marks to be too strong, because I want them to feel like they're further away than the stone in the front. Because distance is an effect that we want to capture in our reference. It's not just about capturing objects and how they look, but it's the relationship of certain objects to other objects. And distance is certainly one of those things. Capturing the light, the sense of light and dark, or shade and shadow, whether it's a bright or a shaded day, are all part of capturing the effect. And so I'm using a 0.3mm pen for the foreground, for the stonework. But from the top of the hill, the building and further back, I'm using a 0.1mm pen. Now I'm just doing this shadow on the side here. The other significant thing in this scene, though, that is often overlooked, in fact is often a weakness in drawings, is the ground. I'm sure many people would in fact think that this is not really interesting enough to draw because, well, there's a lot of foreground and that's not very interesting. There's nothing there. Well, there is something there. There is this, firstly, weathered earthen surface that very much goes with the eroded objects that we have around it. It's in fact the earth that holds the remnants of brickwork, of foundations of this stone wall in place. So the earth firstly is the context of these earlier architectural artifacts. But the earth also has shape and form, and it has what we see in front of us going up the hill has this worn roundedness that's been tracked into it by many weary feet before me, but then including mine going up this hill trying to reach the top. And it's capturing that effect of the ground, capturing the subtle effect of the erosion, of the slight gully shape as we go up, that in itself winds slightly from side to side according to other things that were in the soil. is a very important part of this scene, because this scene is not just the house on the hill, but it's the journey up the hill. The stonework, the bricks half buried, this overhanging tree I'm drawing now, this building beyond are all part of the journey up the hill. This is a drawing of an experience. This is a drawing of a journey up a hill, and the ground therefore is very important. And if I were just seeing this, if I were just judging this as a series of objects, is this an interest? Are these interesting objects? Then I might decide that there's nothing in this to draw, because the house is very plain and we don't even see much of it. But it's the overall composition, it's the overall effect, it's the creation of the effect of a journey where the viewer, I hope, is drawn into the scene by the dark, strong stonework in the lower left, and follow up the track, up the worn path, past the house, under the tree, past the house, and to the buildings beyond. And so, how do I draw the ground? Well, I draw the ground by creating marks that create the effect of what I can see in my scene. And what I can see are little rocks and leaves and sticks and stones, and some of these I only see them because they catch tiny shadows, but together those shadows give an indication of the terrain of the ground where it's eroded down and comes up again. And I want to capture that effect. I can't possibly draw the detail, I can't possibly draw the reality, but I want to capture the effect of the reality. The grass in the very front I can see quite clearly, but we don't go very far up the hill and the grass becomes almost impossible to see in a blade by blade sense. So I need to foreshorten whatever is on the ground, but particularly the grass and other rocks, as they move further away. The same way I would foreshorten windows along a wall that were moving further away. And then my scene is done and I take off the tape. And if I were thinking of an interesting object to draw, I might never have even drawn this. But instead of seeing this as a series of objects to copy, seeing this scene in totality as an overall presentation of something, of capturing a feel, a moment, a story, and creating marks on the paper that create a sense of reality, the effect of the reality, in fact, we're able to manipulate all of these elements to highlight the scene, the story, the narrative, the journey, whatever it is that appeals to us in a way that we otherwise couldn't do. What we draw, in the end, comes from how we think, and then choosing marks to create the effect, not for any one object, but overall for the combination of all the objects. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. I hope this has been interesting. It's a different way of thinking that many of us would have, but for me it's been a transformational way of thinking. I'm not trying to draw reality, I'm trying to capture the effect of reality in the marks I choose to put on the paper. If you want to have a go drawing this, you'll find the reference on my channel community page. But look, whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.